One of my favorite compliments that people will often give upon entering my home is how cozy it looks. And I love that because it means that I've succeeded in my goal of fostering a warm and inviting home environment, one that creates space for long hours of good conversation and laughter amongst friends, or lazy days curled up with a good book or a movie. So I figured we could chat over a cup of tea some of my favorite tips for designing a home that doesn't just look cozy, but emanates that warm, lived-in feeling. So as we get into this, I want to thank Wayfair for sponsoring today's video. We'll chat more about them in a bit, but now let's get started with the first tip. One of my favorite ways to add that cozy factor to any room is to mix old and new in your decor. There's something about older vintage and antique pieces that really draws you in and adds character in a way that newer items can't. Looking at them, you think about all the stories they tell, the memories they hold. And when you contrast them against some newer bits, it really allows them to shine and gives your home that one-of-a-kind feeling. Like it didn't just come out of a big box store, but instead has been lovingly pieced together over time. If your home currently uses primarily newer pieces, a couple of easy ways that you can kind of begin incorporating some of those older vintage pieces is to visit your local thrift store or even antique mall to find maybe a vase, planter, or a piece of artwork that speaks to you when that would work well in your home. And then just slowly over time, sprinkle in pieces here and there that have that character, that history to them. Then something else that is so important to consider, especially when it comes to selecting furniture pieces, is that comfort needs to be king. I don't care how pretty a chair or a sofa is, if it's not comfortable, no one's going to want to sit in it. So ditch the uncomfortable furniture and instead opt for pieces that invite you to stay a while. The most obvious place to do this is in your main living space with your sofas, any accent chairs that you may have. You want to pick pieces that are deep enough for people to sink into in cozy, soft fabrics. But I want you to think about comfort when it comes to some of those less obvious areas as well. Pick comfy dining chairs and bar stools. Especially if you enjoy entertaining, you want to make sure that your dining table, your kitchen island are places where people don't feel like they just need to sit down to eat their meal and then quickly move somewhere more comfortable, but instead can eat slowly and enjoy hours of good conversation around the table. Then something else that you'll find in almost any cozy space is attention to detail. When it comes to fostering a cozy environment, it's not just about how a space looks, it's about how it lives in. So whatever space you're trying to add warmth to, think about how you use the room and what details might help you to amp up the cozy factor. Maybe it's having a cookie jar filled with treats in the kitchen, a record player that you can play music from in your living room, or even something like having accessible toilet paper and extra toiletries in the bathroom. Often it's the small details that add comfort and ambiance that really finish a room. All right, but then if, like me, you love interior decorating and just the impact that a well-designed space truly can have, then you're going to love Wayfair's YouTube channel and their series Iconic Objects. You probably know about Wayfair's site, which has everything you need when it comes to decorating your home. But did you know that they also have an amazing YouTube channel as well? One of my favorite series over there is Iconic Objects, and this season, Becky Lynn from the Sorry Girls is hosting. She does such a great job diving deep into the fascinating history of some of the most unique and interesting home decor objects around. So this season, she's looking at some of the crazy stories behind things like the Japanese lucky cat, mushroom lamps, Adirondack chairs, and so much more. In this week's episode, she explores the fascinating history behind mid-century conversation pits. And guys, I just watched this episode and I learned so much. But I love that it isn't just about the history too. Becky goes into how some of these items have taken on a life of their own and really shows you them in a whole new light. So if you're looking for a dose of interior inspiration, or maybe you're just interested to know what the history is behind conversation pits, how did those even come to be, then be sure to check out Iconic Objects. And while you're on Wayfair's YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss new episodes, as well as some of the other amazing content that I have on there. So thank you again to Wayfair's YouTube channel for sponsoring today's video. But then something else that I like to do is to play with different textiles and patterns. elements. Too much of the same texture, the same pattern, is going to give your home a very formal and kind of matchy-matchy feeling. Think like a traditional bedroom furniture set, a pattern that's repeated again and again and again. Maybe it's a chevron, a plaid. Something that you'll often find with cozy spaces is that they have a very lived-in, collected feeling. And variation, whether that's in textiles, patterns, even colors, can add warmth and interest. So don't be afraid to play around with wood, metal, stone, leather, woven textures. The opportunities are endless, and really the more the better. Of course, you still want to make sure that everything's cohesive, that the various elements that you use play well together, but adding in various textures, textiles, patterns, all of that is going to add dimension. It helps break up your space so that everything doesn't just look the same. Then something else that I think is really helpful to keep in mind is that you want to avoid the trendy trap. With the rise of social media, decor trends are everywhere. You see the same ideas being shared with slight variation again and again and again, and the result is that a lot of homes just end up looking the same. And I'm not anti-trend, but I do think that leaning too hard into home decor trends can make your home feel a bit less unique. So what I'd recommend is just be selective about what trends you choose to incorporate into your home. If something is true to your personal decor style, then great, incorporate it. But if something is not your style, it's okay to pass on it, even if it's popular. One question that I like to ask myself that I often find helpful is, 5 years from now, am I still going to like this and want it in my home? That can be a helpful way of just thinking through whether or not a trend is worth incorporating into your home, or maybe if you should skip that one. And one really easy tip that I love is just to keep some books lying around. There's something about books that is just so visually inviting, but I also love how having books out can encourage you to read more too, and to take advantage of the space you've created. But that said, if you're not a book person, maybe it would be a better idea for you to skip the books and instead opt for having something like a puzzle out on your coffee table, or a stack of games that are ready to be played. With this one, I want you to think through how you live in your home. Don't put out a chess set if you don't like the game of chess. Opt for other games instead. The same thing goes for puzzles, for books. You want the elements that you use to cozy up your space to be things that you love and want to spend more time doing. Then another ingredient to a cozy home is decor that really tells a story. I recommend skipping art from the big box stores and instead go thrifting. Pick up art during your travels. That's something I've recently started doing, and I love how pieces like that really have a memory associated with them as well. You can also support local makers or even make something yourself. A lot of the paintings in our house are actually ones that Christopher painted, and I love being able to have a space to display some of his art. I just love how decor like that makes for great conversation pieces and adds to that warm, collected feeling in your home. And we talked earlier about incorporating different textures and patterns, but kind of the counterpoint to that is you want to design a low stimulation environment. Bold colors, prints, and patterns can be a lot of fun, but they're also very loud and can often detract from the coziness of a home. So instead, try to opt for a cohesive color palette that will add a sense of warmth to your home. Don't hear what I'm not saying with this one. I'm not saying don't use color. Just pick colors. Use a color palette that goes well together. Your goal should be to create a warm, harmonious look. And if you're struggling with what colors are going to help you achieve that look, something that I love to do is to look to nature. What colors naturally occur in nature, and how can you maybe incorporate some of those into your home to bring in that inviting feeling. And something else you can do is to layer your lighting. A common denominator that you'll find in almost any cozy space is lighting coming from multiple different sources, whether that's a fireplace, different lamps, a candle. For the most part, you're going to want to avoid any harsh overhead lighting, especially cooler toned lights, and instead use warm tone lights in a variety of heights and coming from multiple sources. That's going to give you this really beautiful layered look to your lighting where the shadows just bounce off all the walls. Then I also love leaning into natural elements in decor as well. You know that feeling of just complete peace that you get when sitting on the edge of a sparkling lake, going for a hike through a forest of towering trees. I love trying to bring the peace that the outdoors brings us into our homes. In my opinion, it is one of the easiest things that you can do to make your home feel cozy. here. So bring in fresh flowers, use plants, incorporate some dried stems, or it can even be as simple as using natural textures like wood or stone in your decor. But using nature in your decor, I feel like really does help make a space that when you step into it, you can just breathe a bit more deeply and relax. And just a few more ideas here. Something that I don't feel like I hear people talk about all the time is to not forget the food. Before you say, wait, food? That has nothing to do with creating a cozy space. Hear me out. I want you to think about some of your favorite things to do around your home. Maybe that's watching a movie, curling up with a good book, enjoying a meal around the dinner table. Maybe you have a fire pit and it's having a bonfire with some friends. I'm going to guess that whatever your favorite things to do are, they're made a bit better by having the right food or beverages on hand. Whether that's popcorn with your movie, a tea with your book, food for dinner, or s'mores around the campfire. We talked about the importance of details before, and I feel like having the right food or beverage for a given occasion really does just make whatever it is that you're doing just that much more cozy. All right, but then one that should go without saying but needs to be said is to leverage the power of the pillow and blanket. What sofa isn't made comfier with just the right amount of pillows and blankets to snuggle up with? I love having some on our sofa or accent chairs with more available should the person want an extra blanket to cozy up with. But I will say something you want to keep in mind with this is you don't want to go overboard. With throw pillows especially, you can have too much of a good thing. We've probably all had the experience of trying to sit down on a couch where every square inch is taken up with pillows and there's nowhere for you to sit. So you want to find the just right amount where the throw pillows you have add support and coziness to your sofa without overcrowding it. The same thing goes for throw blankets. It can be nice to have a few out, but avoid having too many by putting the rest either in a blanket basket or just a way out of view. All right, but then I want to end with a really important one, and that's don't worry about everything being perfect. Just for a moment, I want you to think about the coziest spaces you can. Maybe it's your parents' or grandparents' house. Maybe it's a local bookstore or coffee shop. Rarely are those spaces perfect. Instead, they're perfectly imperfect, lived in and loved. So I just want to take the pressure off you. Don't worry if your space doesn't look like something out of a magazine. The coziness of a home has a lot more to do with how it feels than how it looks. And you get to help create that ambiance, that environment. So learn to embrace the little quirks of your home, the messes that come with everyday life, because it's those things that add so much character to your home. All right, friends, well, I hope these tips can help you to create a cozy home, one that's warm, that's inviting, that makes you want to spend time in it, to invite others into it as well. But before I go, I did just quickly want to remind you to check out Wayfarer's YouTube channel and their series Iconic Objects. I'll have all the information about it linked up for you in the description box below, so be sure to check that out after finishing this video. Now, I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that you do to foster a cozy home environment? Be sure to let me know in the comments, and as always, friends, don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, friends.